How should you respond if you have to let go some of your employees? We're talking about it today on the Good Advice podcast. And what one Microsoft executive told the 9,000 employees who were let go from Microsoft this last week, including a little detail about how they can use AI to cope. Yikes. Hey, we're going to be talking about it on today's show. My name's Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice podcast, and you've chosen the place to learn how to do business better. Thanks for checking out the show. We got a quick ad before we air today's episode, and don't forget, you can always support the podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Do you ever feel like your payment processor is robbing you blind? For some of us, it's not blind. We look at the amount of money that's going to our payment processor month after month, and a lot of times we ask ourselves, is there a better way? I'm making good money, yet so much of it isn't actually ending up in my pocket. In the world of payment processing, in many cases, it's a cashless world, so you have to have a payment processor you can really trust. I personally am a big fan of Brad Norwood, who's the owner of PrimePaymentsUSA.com. Brad's a business owner himself. He knows all the challenges that come with running a business. More importantly, he knows the value of an individual customer. See, some of these bigger businesses, they're all about scale. They're all about bringing in as many customers as possible. But do they know your name? Do they know your business? Do they know what's important to you? In many cases, the answer is no. And in worst cases, they're just looking to get as much money from every transaction that you work hard for, which really doesn't feel too good. So you got to reach out to Brad Norwood today and understand how he's doing business and why it can save you money month after month. More importantly, you might even ask him about his zero-fee payment processing that he's offering to a select few of people. Go to PrimePaymentsUSA.com and start putting the money that you worked hard for back into your pocket. So I think just getting on the same page, it's not been an easy season for tech companies. We have seen massive cuts in the tech space in the last couple of years, but especially this year. And Microsoft is no different. I think Microsoft did 6,000 or 7,000 that were let go. And then similarly, we live in Walmart world, and kind of the running joke about Walmart world is eventually everyone gets let go. I mean, you'll have your career there, but layoffs at Walmart, I mean, it's the number one employer in the world. Layoffs happen multiple times. It happens every year. And it's not uncommon for someone to have their stint at Walmart and eventually be let go. It just happens. So maybe it's not fair to say it's not uncommon. Or no, I think that is fair. I was going to say it's I don't make it sound like people are getting fired left and right, but it just happens. It happens here, and it happens across a multitude of businesses. But this one in particular was very interesting. The topic of today's podcast is this headline that I saw, where an Xbox executive producer told their staff that AI can provide you emotional clarity and confidence if you've been let go. It can help you get through this difficult time. And I read this and thought, bro, dude, come on, man. Like, really? And if there's not anything that is like peak, like a great illustration of the times today with AI, I think this headline does it. We have AI inundating every single facet of our life, from here's how you send an email to someone, here's how you send a DM to someone, here's how you write a letter to someone. And I'm even seeing like jokes and meme content around like breakup text being written by AI. And, it's just, and here's the deal. I'm not going to totally fault people for this because, not everyone is super savvy in how to say something. And I do remember I had a customer a few years ago who had to let go. Actually, no, she had to have a hard conversation with one of her employees. And she was like, so what do I say? And, I gave her some pointers. And ultimately, I was like, hey, this is one of those things where, having candid conversations and having hard conversations is like a muscle. You got to just use it and practice at getting better at it. And, try to be as empathetic and tactful as you can. But it doesn't always come natural. So I don't necessarily have a problem with people using AI to learn how to say things better and do things better. I mean, I think if it can save some pain on the other end of the conversation, I think that, that's not a bad idea. Now, having said that, I did see someone posted their job rejection letter on social media a few weeks ago, and the job rejection letter, unfortunately, somebody copied and pasted a ChatGPT output that they had left the prompt in, and the prompt said, give me a rejection letter that's empathetic and lets them know that we appreciate their time. But they left that part in the prompt. And so when the person got their rejection letter, it literally listed the prompt and was like, dude, come on, man. Like you couldn't at least pretend like you wrote this yourself. Like, come on. And so like a lot of these things are grounded in somebody wanting to do the right thing. But unfortunately, in this case with Microsoft, this one was a little bit beyond the pale. It was not a good situation. So effectively, what happened was, like I mentioned, Microsoft had to let go 9,000 employees last week. And an executive turned to LinkedIn and posted a particular message. Let me get this pulled up here real quick. If I can get my website to load. This executive in particular posted that these are really challenging times. And if you're navigating a layoff or even preparing for one, you're not alone and you don't have to go it alone. And I'll just say that even this opening line reads like AI to me. I'm just like, I don't know, man. This reads like a blog that I would find on a website. I don't know. I don't know about this. And he goes on to say, I know these types of tools can engender strong feelings in people. And by the way, it does. It does engender strong feelings only because we are seeing AI become a replacement for literally every human interaction imaginable. We're sort of losing our genuine connection with one another. But he goes on to say, I'd be remiss in not trying to offer the best advice I can under the circumstances. And also, I have a little bit of an issue with this line. I think sometimes people, when you go through a hard time, there are unfortunately people who are like, "Hey, I can't not tell you. I feel like it'd be wrong if I didn't tell you." And have you ever been on the other side of this conversation where someone says that to you and you think in your head, "I'd really kind of prefer you didn't tell me. I'd really prefer you hadn't said anything." It's like when someone, you go through like a death in the family and then someone's like, hey, I feel like it'd be wrong for me not to say something. My dog died and I know exactly what you're going through. Not that your dog dying isn't difficult and not to minimize anything like that, but the contexts are totally different. It's totally different. And I always just find it so interesting when someone's like, "Hey, I feel like I need to tell you this," or "I feel like I should tell you this," or "I feel like it's wrong if I didn't tell you this." And then on the other side of it, you're like, "Really? Like you really felt like you needed to? I would have preferred you didn't. I would have preferred you hadn't said anything." And I'll even point out that even in my younger days, I do think this is a bit of a taught habit. Even in my younger days, in my probably early 20s, I really felt like being candid and direct and letting people know what I thought was something that was, even if it was underappreciated in the moment, that people would appreciate it down the road. Well, that down the road never happened. Instead, I think people thought I was a douchebag. I mean, just I don't think I think actually I had a mentor somewhere in my mid-20s who gave me this age-old quote. I don't know who this is from. This is a common one. I think maybe John Maxwell. But it's basically people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. And that really framed my perspective on hard conversations of, there needs to be a relationship there. There needs to be empathy there. And even today, when people ask me for advice, not like in a business sense, but when someone asks me for perspective on something, it's not uncommon that I will say, do you want to know what I think or are you looking for encouragement? And I used to say, are you looking for me to validate what you think? But now I think even saying that sounds a little bit too fake. So I try to say, hey, are you looking for someone to listen to you? Or even as I'm describing it now, it sounds condescending. But genuinely, I will typically say something like that of, hey, are you looking to vent or do you want my perspective? And only because I have found that if people don't actively want your perspective, it sometimes ends up being wasted advice, and wasted in the sense of it doesn't move them in any positive direction, and often it makes you look like a jerk for sharing a perspective that they never really wanted or asked for. But I digress. In this particular case of this Microsoft executive, here's this person saying, I'd be remiss not to share. And considering he deleted this message after it went viral, I think he is now thinking maybe I should have not posted this. But anyway, he goes on to say, I've been experimenting with ways to use LLM AI tools like ChatGPT or Copilot to help reduce the emotional and cognitive load that comes with my job loss, or excuse me, that comes with job loss. Again, this reads like AI. Why would someone just randomly be experimenting with ChatGPT on the emotional load that comes with job? It's such a random, strange, niched out one liner that it's kind of like it almost feels like this is an AI written piece of content. But he goes on to say, here's some prompt ideas and use cases that might help you if you're feeling overwhelmed. Again, because you've been fired and you've lost your livelihood. Career planning prompts. Act as a career coach. I've been laid off from this role in the game industry. Help me build a 30-day plan to regroup, research, blah, 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 blah. Resume and LinkedIn help. Here's my current resume. Give me 3 tailored versions that I can distribute. Networking and outreach. Draft a friendly message I can send to old coworkers, letting them know I'm exploring new opportunities. Oh my gosh, man. This stuff just, man, it gets under my skin. It's just so I think it also just it presupposes that AI is so authentically a replacement for human to human connection when all of us can tell when someone has messaged us with an AI message. Emotional clarity and confidence. I'm struggling with imposter syndrome after being laid off. Can you help me reframe this experience in a way that reminds me what I'm good at? And then he finally says, no AI tool is a replacement for your voice or your lived experience, but at a time when mental energy is scarce, these tools can help you get unstuck faster, calmer, and with more clarity. Uh, and then one of the comments on this post, again, that is now deleted, says, geez, read the effing room. Wow. Okay. I think that pretty much sums it up. So, man, why does it feel like whenever someone is let go, there is an executive who it's like just be empathetic, help people find new jobs, connect people with your connections. These are just like sort of basic things that I think make sense. And yet, we see people who offer insights or perspectives or say things that ultimately make it that is either makes it about them or is disconnected from reality. One of the things that I posted about this story was the crying CEO, which this may not be something that you're familiar with, but basically a year or two ago, there was a guy on LinkedIn who posted a picture of himself crying, which by the way, this is like the one thing I hate about social media, like the in the moment reaction photos that get posted, like someone crying or it's just I kind of like think about, okay, well, thinking about the logistics of someone holding up the camera, you know, hitting the countdown. Is that the right angle? Let me try again. And I even remember there was a video of a woman who was like doing like the wiping the tear away. And I don't know why there was a second camera here, but she was like doing the wiping the tear away, taking the picture, and then she looked at it, not crying anymore. She looked at it, then she held the camera up again, did the wiping the tear away. Like this stuff, and again, if you know me long term, if you listen to the podcast long term, I'm very I'm very intentional about just authentic, real, again, human to human interactions. This is like the worst part of social media where people are, it's performative, it's to engender support, it's like all these different things. But so this crying CEO takes a picture of him, tears down his face, and he says, I've gone back and forth on whether I should post this or not. Buddy, you should not have posted this. But he says, we just had to lay off some of our people. I've seen a lot of layoffs due to the economy or whatever. Whose fault is it? It's my fault. Blah, 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 blah. He goes on to say, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. We're always been a people first business. And unfortunately, I'm not happy today about who I've had to hurt along the way, yada, yada, yada. We've laid off people that, I know it's not professional to tell my employees that I love them, but I really hope they know that I do love them, every single one of them. And that makes me cry. They're part of my family. I can't think of a lower moment than this. And it's like, bro, what are we doing? What are we doing, man? Like, ooh, and this guy, rightfully got eviscerated. And this is like the tough thing about PR too. Maybe I just believe in the good in people too much. I have to believe there was an element of this person who really thought this would be motivating and encouraging and empowering to someone who read it. Instead, I mean, I honestly, because I post so much content, there's always this thought in the back of my mind of, okay, is there anything I'm posting or saying or doing that's going to be taken the wrong way? And God forbid I ever communicate something against my intentions of the message I want to communicate. But I did also have a boss once who we were on this topic of conversation on like behavior being misinterpreted. And she said, she goes, I just try to like focus my energy on not being a terrible human being. And that seems to be like working out in terms of like people's perceptions of me. So maybe that's just what it is at the end of the day. I don't know. Not that the CEO is a terrible human being. I'm just talking about, saying things that people take the wrong way. So this guy rightfully got eviscerated, and people were like, dude, you could have made it about the employees, but you made it about you. You could have posted about those staff people. You could have, and I'm also like, and this is another just part of who I am. I'm a Christian and I don't talk about this. I think about sometimes the Bible verse on, when you pray, you do it in private. You don't try to make a big show of it. I'm obviously paraphrasing. And I just think, there's another verse about, when you're giving, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. And there's just something about doing the right thing and how it feels like it's so much more honest and intentional and authentic and right when you're doing those things in secret rather than making a big show of it. And I'm not to say this in like a cryptic way or like to build my ego but there are things that I've done in my life that I could very easily turn into a social media post of like, look what I've done, look how virtuous I am, look how much integrity, look at this thing that I did. And I haven't shared about those things and I haven't talked about those things. And there's one thing in particular that I did a few years ago that was, I would just call a good deed, and I've never told anyone about it. Only my wife knows about it, which even saying that sounds so cryptic. It's like, what did you do? I didn't do anything that important. But point being, I just feel like, it's like the social media person who like films them walking around giving sandwiches to homeless people or like whatever. And it's like they create like this very meaningful viral reel about it. And I'm just like, couldn't you just done it? Couldn't you have done it without the camera on? Now, there is some nuance here around. I have seen chatter and conversation about when you do the right thing publicly, it empowers other people to also do the right thing. And I recognize that nuance and I don't have a problem really with that. But I don't know. There's just a part of me that's just like, it just seems like there's sort of like a more wholesome angle when it's done in secret than it is for show or for clicks or for views or what have you. So, if it's me and I'm having to lay people off, I'm not making a big show about it. I'm not doing a picture of me crying or whatever. I am privately connecting with people in my industry. I'm connecting with people that I've built relationships with. I am, hey, here's a great employee. Here's someone who can help you out. I mean, I'm even doing this with people who aren't even my employees. I just had someone reach out last week and they said, hey, I'm moving jobs and, would you be willing to give me a referral? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I wrote a letter of recommendation for that company's CEO and emailed it to him and said, hey, this person just applied for this job. Here's a letter of recommendation if you would be willing to take a look at it. And, obviously you have all these great candidates and, I just, this is my recommendation for that position. It's just like an outsider. So again, I don't say any of that like, wow, I wrote a letter, nothing like that. I'm just saying, I just feel like these are the things you should do rather than I'm not making a post, a big virtuous post about, it's just, I don't know, man. I'm just like, can we not just do the right thing and not get a bunch of clicks for it? It's kind of my perspective in life, I guess. So this guy made this post. He said, "Hey, use AI to make it feel better." And there's a greater conversation to be had here, I think. And this isn't, unfortunately, I'm just going to be real direct and honest. Economy has sucked for many years now. I'd say for 5 years plus. If you have survived in business this long, congratulations, you have survived. I mean, I'm a millennial, and like since adulthood, like since becoming 18, there has never been like a great time to be an adult. I graduated college on the heels of the housing collapse in 2010. We had COVID, we had, inflation, we've all this crazy stuff. And it's like, you know what? The game's never been played on easy mode, I guess I'll say. So it's tough for everybody. Everyone's trying to figure it out. It's not easy. But here's what I do think. I think that it gets under my skin the number of times that I've read stories about companies having record breaking profits, on companies that are making so much money. They've never made more money ever before. And on the same token, downsizing, letting people go, laying people off, letting employees know that, hey, sorry, it's our direction has changed. You don't have a place here. I'm just something doesn't add up there. And this isn't like a new concept for me. Like I talked about this probably 4 or 5, actually, no, this would have been longer. This would have been back when I was in Germany in 2018, 2019. And I talked about a German business that had become very successful and very profitable, and how the owner of that business, how he said, I am successful because I pay my employees so much, not because I pay them so few or so little. I don't know the correct language there. Am I crazy for thinking like this is the right way to do life? Like, shouldn't we be paying our people well? Shouldn't we be taking care of our employees? I don't mean like in a cult way, like you're part of the family now. I just like, is this not like a basic human to human thing to do? Of someone works for us and we make sure that they're taken care of? And I understand that every place in the world is different, and that cost of living is different everywhere. And, the person living in one state may not make the same amount of money as someone living in another. I mean, I don't know any of that minutia in level of detail, but it just seems like, I don't know. I just feel like someone who works for me should be paid well, should be at least be paid well compared to competition. Like I have a friend of mine who's talked a lot about running this business, and he's like, "Man, yeah." And this was actually, telling the story, this was like almost 10 years ago. So even now the numbers are outdated, but he was talking about a business where the average pay was like $17, and he was like, "Yeah, my starting pay is going to be $22. I just want it to be a little bit better than the competition. I want to attract a little bit better competition. I want to take a little bit better care of my team versus what other people are doing." And I do think sometimes we're a little bit too puristic and holistic. And, it's like, I do see some of these perspectives where it's like, if you're not paying your employees more than what you're making, what do you even do? And it's like, okay, well, it's a little bit detached from reality. You as the business owner, you are taking on all the risk. You're built it from scratch. You're the one curating the business and building the relationships and building the brand and what have you. And so I do think there's a little bit of a little overly insistent, a little overly holistic about the approach to this kind of conversation, I guess. But here's what I will say is I do think the model is broken. I think it's broken, and I think it's backwards. And I'll point to a book that I've loved for a long time. It's called Good to Great. It's from Jim Collins. And the analogy I've talked about on the podcast before, the analogy is the window in the mirror. And what Jim Collins says is that when you look at history, historically great businesses, you will typically find a leader who looks at their employees through the lens of a window when things go well and a mirror when things go poorly. So when the business is booming, when the business is doing well, they look out the window and they see all of their employees and they say, wow, we're doing great because of all of these amazing people. And they incentivize and pay them accordingly. And when things go wrong, they look in the mirror and they say, man, what have I done wrong? How did I get here? How did I screw us up this badly? And similarly, when there's pain in the business, they direct that at themselves rather than making the frontline employees take the brunt of that punishment. And what Jim Collins says is that bad companies get it backwards. When things go well, they congratulate the people at the top. You see businesses with massive payouts to executives and CEOs. And when things go poorly, you see the frontline employees who face the brunt of the criticism and who get let go and who, all of those things that happen. Now, this isn't like a fairy tale. This isn't a, silly story of like, oh, that would never work in the real world. It does work in the real world. Now, I'll give you an example. Nintendo, Satoru Iwata, back in 2014, he and many of the senior leadership with Nintendo, when the Wii U failed commercially, he and other executives took 50% pay cuts so that employees would not be let go. And this wasn't the first time that he did this. This was the second time. He also took a 50% pay cut in 2011 when the 3DS, the handheld console, handheld whatever, did poorly as well. Now, these cynics in the world will say, well, they're executives, they get paid enough, they can afford to take 50%. And it's like, you know what, that may be true, and yet I don't see other businesses doing that. Here you have people at the top who are looking out the window, and they're seeing that when things go well, great job, team. And when things go poorly, they're looking in the mirror and they're blaming themselves, and they're not making some LinkedIn post about how hard it is to have to let people go. No, they're being actionable and practical, doing tangible things by reducing their own pay by 50% so that no one has to be let go. That is the kind of leader that I want to be. That is the kind of leadership that I want to promote and support. And that's the kind of leadership we need more of. Not, hey, check out AI for getting through this time. I want the real leader. I want the real leader to step up and to show me and lead by example of this is how we get through a difficult time. And I'll just say, a lot of people, they love the status that comes with leadership position, but they ignore the responsibility of what comes with it. So whether you lead one person or 10 people or 20 people or 50 people, you have an opportunity to live out your leadership philosophy through the window in the mirror and to do it the right way. Hey, that's today's Good Advice podcast episode. Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you're a first-time listener, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast. Of course, I appreciate all of your support, and I support you. Hey, random person, I support you. I do appreciate the support on the show. So thanks for checking out the Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Or if you're a business who has sponsored the show, thank you for that as well. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you later.